As usual, any questions and comments in the chat, please, and we'll go through those either at the end or as we go along. Just to say, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Celia Mackenzie, the Head of Nursing for the Children's Hospital. Ramadan Kareem to all our Muslim colleagues, and as you know, Ramadan is the holy month of introspection, prayers and fasting to commemorate the Prophet Muhammad's first revelations of the Quran, and we would like to wish those observing this month and their family a safe and blessed Ramadan. Okay, moving on to highlights from the tactical meetings of this week. Last week, thanks from Julian noting how busy urgent care and the inpatient bed base have been in the last week, and we had the same issues with capacity and were very busy over last week. There was a discharge event from adults last Tuesday, and that showed that we've really increased our multi-agency work in getting patients out of hospital and nearer to home where they really need to be. Still a lot of work to do, but I do know that Leeds has been recognised and acknowledged for the great multi-agency work that we do. Julian also said a massive thank you to everyone for the efforts to reduce the number of patients waiting 104 weeks. And that the target we had set as an organisation for the end of March had been achieved. And we're well on the way with the aim of having no patients waiting more than 104 weeks by the end of June. And certainly, you know, that's caused us some challenges. You know, it's absolutely the right thing for the patients. But when you have those patients and acutes as well, it's making sure that we get everybody treated appropriately. As of last week, there were 176 patients in the bed base that were COVID positive, and the projection for next week was a bit unknown, expecting the numbers though to continue to increase, and there are further wards identified to open as red wards should we need them. The nosocomial rate remains high but stable at 27.5%, and that is linked in with the number of positive patients that we're seeing. We're awaiting national guidance on staff and elective patient testing, and interim arrangements to continue with the existing arrangements. I'm reminding everybody that if you do want to wear an FFP3 mask, you can do so. That doesn't have to be in an AGP situation. And last, for March and February, in March, we completed 500 more elective operations, which was more than we had done in February. And it was the best month for elective activity since pre-pandemic. So a massive thank you to everyone that had helped in some way or another. And then moving on to bronze, there wasn't a bronze meeting last week. So just going to update you a little bit on the Building the Leeds Way. So there've been some work done in relation to stacking from particularly involving specialities that have raised some concerns about their adjacencies and distances from critical areas that they work with, and some timings of what current timings are moving from one place to another now and what it will look like in the new build. All that information has been pulled together, and Mike Richards is leading on a risk assessment. So we've gone back out to teams that are involved, asking them to complete a risk assessment and how we might mitigate risk if the time is longer compared to what they're currently experiencing. And those will all be reviewed and looked at, and we will be meeting up with the teams again, as well as linking in with the Building the Leeds Way team. We've also, Laura and I, submitted what our projections for nurse staffing would be for the new build, and we're awaiting a response from that. And a number of teams have had final catch-up meetings following the clinical planning meetings that took place the week before last. Hopefully, most of those now, I think, are pretty much agreed for clinical sign-off. Once clinical sign-off's agreed, then those will be presented to the TRI team, and then they move forward to the board. and before they go to the trust board for final sign-off. So the clinical sign-off, as everybody who attended the meetings knows, that's the very first stage of the sign-off process. Moving on to operational pressures for last week and the week ahead, our operational pressures remain focused on PICU, HDU and the CAT unit. We had hoped to open HDU today, but we've had 4 members of staff off sick this morning, so we will be monitoring that on a daily basis in the hope that we do get HDU open this week. We still have pressures with staff being off due to COVID, and at our peak last week we had 38 staff off. So as you can see, on any one day, that's a number of staff off on each shift, and some areas are affected more than others. And we're moving nursing staff around all the time to support areas. And a massive thank you to our teams that are working really hard to ensure that we support each other. We have been seeing high attendances at the CAT unit, and we're just going to do a piece of work this week to look at what that looks like compared to this time last year. But it was feeling quite pressured with long waits to see doctors at times. We still need to remain.
I've just tried.
We still need to remain focused on discharge and getting our patients out before 3 p.m. and also if they're ready to go home within 24 hours, what's stopping the patient from going home for today? Asking ourselves that question. And then in relation to COVID and swabbing, healthcare workers still need to have a PCR test. So for our staff, they can come through the COVID swabbing email, which we'll put in the chat. I don't know whether Ed wants to put that in the chat. Because the guidance hasn't changed, therefore we do need a PCR for people to be able to come back to work. So if you are a household contact and you've got a negative lateral flow, you need to have a PCR that's negative and then do daily lateral flows that need to remain negative before you can come to work. And we're also, just to acknowledge that we're aware that there's a problem for patients that are outside of Leeds getting a PCR test. So some of our patients are regional and super regional, and they need a PCR before they can be admitted. I've sent an email to the IPC team. I haven't had a response yet, but do our best to try and get a PCR swab done locally. If not, we're going to isolate on arrival and do a point of care test on those patients, which shouldn't be big numbers. However, we have asked IPC whether a lateral flow will be acceptable for the patients that are out of Leeds. We're also awaiting the link for the NHS workers to access lateral flows. We expect that to be launched any time now. So moving on to the financial position, and Suzanne, thank you.
Thanks, Celia. So just to update everybody, we have submitted our first financial forecast for the current financial year that we're now in for 22-23 at the beginning of March, where we were predicting big numbers in that best case scenario, we were at 1.5 million and mid case, 1.5 million. Sorry, with our first forecast, we were predicting we would be 2.3 million and the mid case scenario would be 3.8 million in terms of what gap we had with our budget, so how much in the red we were. We're asked to revise and resubmit that by the end of March, by the 31st of March, which we have been doing. And as expected, various different changes were made to our budgets that we were being funded for, things that we weren't being funded for, and we were able to change our forecast based on that. So as we sit here today with our current forecast, we are forecasting that we will have a gap in a best case scenario of 1 million and in a mid case scenario of 2.5 million. So that's how much in the red we are predicting we will be this financial year. There's still the things that we're waiting to hear on in terms of what will and will not be funded. So that is still subject to change. However, the absolute key to all of this is waste reduction. And it's just a plea really to encourage everybody to please continue with your waste reduction work. What we can do when we are in a financially sustainable position as a CSU is incredible, and we'll get onto that in a couple of minutes time, when I'm going to just do a quick reflection on what we've achieved for the previous financial year, because we were in such a sustainable financial position. So I'll go through that in a couple of minutes time, but first of all I'll just bring Liz in to talk through and highlight an example of one of our current waste reduction schemes. Liz, thanks.
Morning everyone, I'm Liz Smith, Business Manager for Waste Reduction, Quality Improvement and Transformation Projects. I'm hoping that most of you, or all of you even, are aware of our ongoing waste reduction project called Every Drop Counts, and it's aimed at reducing unnecessary blood tests. And today I'd like to briefly share how reducing blood tests was one of the benefits of a recent pathway review in our allergy service. So Dr. Aida Semic Yusufagic, our lead consultant for paediatric allergy, led a review of the urticaria pathway. For those who don't know, urticaria is a skin condition that leads patients to present with hives and is quite unpleasant for them. She created an algorithm for the urticaria pathway, right from acceptance or rejection of the referral, assessment, treatment and follow-up, with the aim of streamlining assessment, cutting down on the number of investigations undertaken and cutting down on unnecessary follow-up appointments. So on average, the allergy service sees about 200 new patients with chronic urticaria each year. And previously, these patients would have had several blood tests done to check for underlying pathology. And these would have cost about £80 per patient. But the pathway reviews highlighted that not all the patients required all the investigations. And now that the new pathway guidance has been implemented, there'll be savings of approximately £4,800 to £6,400 per year just on blood tests. So really quite significant, and also great for the patients if they're not being bled. So there's a few other great outputs of this piece of work, such as the development of guidelines on urticaria for use in primary care and ED. And it's hoped that these will help to reduce the demand on the allergy service, which many of you will know is under very great demands, is a very stretched service. So this will particularly reduce the referrals for acute urticaria, which we now reject because this can be managed by GPs, but the advice is there now for them in how to manage it. Also, patient-initiated follow-up's been incorporated into the pathway for many patients. So this reduces unnecessary follow-up for patients whose urticaria is well controlled, and it frees up much needed clinic capacity for those who most need it and when they need it. So I think all in all, you'll agree it's a great piece of pathway work with multiple benefits. If you'd like more detail, please contact the allergy team. And if you're undertaking similar work in your own team, please let us know, because we really want to hear about the outputs, like reducing investigations, reduced referrals, transfer of patients to PIFU, and then we can log these and recognise them as contributing towards our collective CSU waste reduction and improvement targets. Thank you. That's it from me today. Thanks
very much, Liz. Back over to Suzanne for lessons learned.
Thank you, and thanks, Liz. That's so important and such a good example of a really good waste reduction scheme, not only in terms of resource, but also, as you said there, we don't want any of our patients being bled when they don't need to be, and as a parent, that's the last thing we want. So it's such an improved patient and family experience. So thank you so much for that. So in terms of lessons learned, there's a couple of things really, and it's Celia alluded to the first thing in the introduction from tactical, and that was the fact that it has felt very busy this March, and we've had a different set of problems and different pressures coming from us from all directions, and nonetheless a lot of our staffing has been impacted quite significantly due to COVID. And it is very different this time in that, politically, it's not quite the same amount of support and attention that's being given to this that was before. So it does feel very different. But I think it is important just highlighting that we did do an extra 500 cases in March and in February across the organisation. And Colin just wanted to point out an example of something that happened with him and his theatre team on Friday, where they had to cancel a case because of COVID. And the kind of teamwork and the camaraderie between himself, the anaesthetist and the theatre team was that not only did they manage to fill that space in theatre with an acute, they also managed to get a second acute through that theatre that was completely unexpected, but because of the way they were working together and that everybody acknowledged that this would be the best use of the time, made arrangements because it ran over a little bit and got that patient that patient done. And it was a real good example of how people working together can really kind of squeeze the most out of the limited resource that we've got and do the right thing by patients and families. So we just wanted to highlight that, and I just thought it was a nice thing to show that it's working like that gets us to where it's one of the toughest months, but we've had more patients operated on than we have done in previous months. And then on that note, really, in terms of sharing success, so I mentioned previously relating to the finances and why it is so important that we are in a sustainable position. And the reason is that for the vast majority of last year we were, and I said back here constantly that we're in a green position, which was a great place to be. And what that has enabled us to do is a plethora of things, and hopefully Ed is going to share a kind of, thank you, share a diagram really, or a poster that's a really good visual of what we managed to achieve in 21-22 by reinvesting in our services, because we were in such a sustainable place to be able to do it. And I know people often, when finances are mentioned, people can switch off and think that's not part of my remit, it's not within my gift to do anything about. It's in all of our remits, and it's in all of our gifts to do something, because people who do the doing are far better placed to identify where there is waste and where we can address that. And if we do, this is the kind of thing that we can do. So I will circulate this because there's an awful lot of information in here, but there's a variety of new posts that have been implemented, new teams that have been implemented and are being trialled. We've managed to fund the outreach team, which is something for years we've wanted to do. We've managed to fund various different nursing posts, administrative posts, additional consultant and medical posts. We've worked well with our charities that have been able to support quite a lot of developments within the Children's Hospital. We've been able to tap into various different pots to be able to support the investment and development within gastroenterology, across nursing, across consultants, social workers and psychology in that one service. And also we've been able to reinvest in it, capital and equipment. So you can see there in red, that gives you the highlights of what equipment we've been able to invest and put into the Children's Hospital. This is all over the last 12 months, and we've been able to do this because we've achieved our waste reduction target and we're in a sound financial position. I want to be here in another 12 months' time with a bigger and better list than that one. But I felt it was important to share that with you, because it is so important that we celebrate on what we actually did manage to achieve during a very, very tricky 12 months. That is an incredible list of things that we've reinvested in and that we've been able to develop in trial as a children's hospital. And we should all be incredibly proud of the fact that we were able to do that in the circumstances that we are in, and how much that support and improves the experience for our patients, their families, and also our workforce. So I thought it was really important. And can we circulate that as well, Ed, please, around everywhere, so people get an opportunity. And please do share this with your teams and celebrate it as a huge success. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Suzanne. Okay, so moving on to any other business, just a reminder about Time to Shine, and nominations are now open. The event's on the 8th of July, nominations close on the 15th of April, so not very long. I think 15th of April is a week on Friday. It is much easier, much more streamlined now to make a nomination. I did one last week. It took me around 7 to 10 minutes, which is what they say on the form. And if they want further information, then they will come back to you for that. So you've not got to write War and Peace. So don't let that put anybody off. Please, please, let's get loads of nominations in for Leeds Children's Hospital. Everyone's amazing, and we should all be up there with some deserving winners. There are a number of awards, but they're all linked in with the Leeds Way values. For instance, Unsung Hero Award and XX Special Recognition Award, they're just two of a number of awards. So please get your thinking hats on, go onto the site and please get nominations coming in. As I say, a week on Friday is the closing date. And over to Ed then for the final bit of any other business.
Thanks, Celia. I think you may have forgotten the Unsung Communications Manager Award there, but never mind. Just one thing to mention from me, I know there's been lots of filming going on with the BBC Hospital crews roaming around the hospital. Thank you to everyone who's been really supportive of that so far. We've had some great feedback from the filming crews and the producers so far. I know interest in the Children's Hospital has picked up as filming's gone along, so lots of things have been picked up. They've picked up on interesting stories, things that we do, and staff that they want to speak to. So thank you so much to everyone. I appreciate it can be an extra thing to think about when you're already really busy, as we've heard, but the end result will be fantastic, and it's going really well for the Children's Hospital, so thank you. There's more filming happening today, and also later in the week. Myself and the comms team are doing our best to keep Celia, Colin and the rest of the team informed as to what's happening where as it comes up. But if you do have any concerns about filming in your area or anything that you're involved in, please let me know, and also let me know any feedback as to how it's going as well. But from our point of view, it's gone really well. Keep in touch, and thank you to everyone who's taken part so far. That's it, Celia. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ed. And I think I've answered the questions or comments in the chat. So it just leaves me to say, everybody have a fantastic week. Hopefully the pressure's not quite so great this week. I know the Leeds schools are broken up now, so maybe people have gone away. And have a great week, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Celia.
Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you.